Ladies and gentlemen, Lonnie Ali.
ISLAMIC. Peace be upon you. You know, I said something to Matt Lauer yesterday that I firmly believed Muhammad had something to do with all of this. And I think we are right. Thank you all for being here to share in this final farewell to Muhammad. On behalf of the Ali family, let me first recognize our principal celebrant, Imam Zaid Shakir, and also Dr. Timothy Giannotti. We thank you for your dedication to helping us fulfill Muhammad's desire that the ceremonies of this past week reflect the traditions of his Islamic faith. And as a family, we thank the millions of people who, through the miracle of social media, inspired by their love for Muhammad, have reached out to us with their prayers. The messages have come in every language, from every corner of the globe. From wherever you are watching, know that we have been humbled by your heartfelt expressions of love. It is only fitting that we gather in a city to which Muhammad always returned after his great triumphs, a city that has grown as Muhammad has grown. Muhammad never stopped loving Louisville, and we know that Louisville loves Muhammad. We cannot forget a Louisville police officer, Joe S.B. Martin, who embraced a young 12-year-old boy in distress when his bicycle was stolen. Joe Martin handed young Cassius Clay, sorry for tripping over that last word, Clay, the keys to a future in boxing he could scarcely have imagined. America must never forget that when a cop and an inner-city kid talk to each other, then miracles can happen. Some years ago, during his long struggle with Parkinson's in a meeting that included his closest advisors, Muhammad indicated that when the end came for him, he wanted us to use his life and his death as a teaching moment for young people, for his country, and for the world. In effect, he wanted us to remind people who were suffering that he had seen the face of injustice, that he grew up in a segregation, and that during his early life, he was not free to be who he wanted to be. But he never became embittered enough to quit or to engage in violence. It was a time when a young black boy his age could be hung from a tree, Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi in 1955, whose admitted killers went free. It was a time when Muhammad's friends, men that he admired, like Brother Malcolm, Dr. King, were gunned down, and Nelson Mandela imprisoned for what they believed in. For his part, Muhammad faced federal prosecution. He was stripped of his title and his license to box, and he was sentenced to prison. But he would not be intimidated so as to abandon his principles and his values. Muhammad wants young people of every background to see his life as proof that adversity can make you stronger. It cannot rob you of the power to dream and to reach your dreams. This is why we built the Muhammad Ali Center, and that is the essence of the Ali Center message. Muhammad wants us to see the face of his religion, Al-Islam, true Islam, as the face of love. It was his religion that caused him to turn away from war and violence. For his religion, he was prepared to sacrifice all that he had and all that he was to protect his soul and follow the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So even in death, Muhammad has something to say. He is saying that his faith required that he take the more difficult road. It is far more difficult to sacrifice oneself in the name of peace than to take up arms in pursuit of violence. You know, all of his life, Muhammad was fascinated by travel. He was childlike in his encounter with new surroundings and new people. He took his world championship fights to the ends of the earth, from the South Pacific to Europe to the Belgian Congo. And of course, with Muhammad, he believed it was his duty to let everyone see him in person because, after all, he was the greatest of all time. The boy from Grand Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky, grew in wisdom from his journeys. He discovered something new, that the world really wasn't black and white at all. It was filled with many shades of rich colors, languages, and religions. And as he moved with ease around the world, the rich and powerful were drawn to him, but he was drawn to the poor and the forgotten. Muhammad fell in love with the masses, and they fell in love with him. In the diversity of men and their faiths, Muhammad saw the presence of God. He was captivated by the work of the Dalai Lama, by Mother Teresa, and church workers who gave their lives to protect the poor. When his mother died, he arranged for multiple faiths to be represented at her funeral, and he wanted the same for himself. We are especially grateful for the presence of the diverse faith leaders here today, and I would like to ask them to stand once more and be recognized. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, as I reflect on the life of my husband, it's easy to see his most obvious talents. His majesty in the ring as he danced under those lights enshrined him as a champion for the ages. Less obvious was his extraordinary sense of timing. His knack for being in the right place at the right time seemed to be ordained by a higher power. Even though surrounded by Jim Crow, he was born into a family with two parents that nurtured and encouraged him. He was placed on the path of his dreams by a white cop, and he had teachers who understood his dreams and wanted him to succeed. The Olympic gold medal came, and the world started to take notice. A group of successful businessmen in Louisville, called the Louisville Sponsoring Group, saw his potential and helped him build a runway to launch his career. His timing was impeccable as he burst into the national stage, just as television was hungry for a star to change the face of sports. You know, if Muhammad didn't like the rules, he rewrote them. His religion, his name, his beliefs were his to fashion, no matter what the cost. The timing of his actions coincided with a broader shift in cultural attitudes across America, particularly on college campuses. When he challenged the US government on the draft, his chance of success was slim to none, that the timing of his decision converged with a rising tide of discontent on the war. Public opinion shifted in his direction, followed by a unanimous Supreme Court ruling. In a stunning reversal of fortunes, he was free to return to the ring. When he traveled to Central Africa to reclaim his title from George Foreman, none of the sports writers thought he could win. In fact, most of them feared for his life. But in what the Africans call the miracle at 4 a.m., he became a champion once more. And as the years passed, and those slowed by Parkinson's, Muhammad was compelled by his faith to use his name and his notoriety to support the victims of poverty and strife. He served as a UN messenger of peace and traveled to places like war-torn Afghanistan. He campaigned as an advocate for reducing the yoke of third world debt. He stunned the world when he secured the release of 15 hostages from Iraq. As his voice grew softer, his message took on greater meaning. He came full circle with the people of his country when he lit a torch that seemed to create new light in the 1996 Olympics. Muhammad always knew instinctively the road he needed to travel. His friends know what I mean when I say he lived in the moment. He neither dwelled in the past nor harbored anxiety about the future. Muhammad loved to laugh, and he loved to play practical jokes on just about everybody. He was sure-footed in his self-awareness, secure in his faith, and he did not fear death. Yet his timing is once again poignant. His passing and its meaning for our time should not be overlooked. As we face uncertainty in a world and divisions at home, as to who we are as a people, Muhammad's life provides useful guidance. Muhammad was not one to give up on the power of understanding the boundless possibilities of love and the strength of our diversity. He counted among his friends people of all political persuasions, saw truth in all faiths and the nobility of all races, as witnessed here today. Muhammad may have challenged his government, but he never ran from it or from America. He loved this country, and he understood the hard choices that are born of freedom. I think he saw a nation's soul measured by the soul of its people. For his part, he saw the good soul in everyone. And if you were one of the lucky ones to have met him, you know what I meant. He awoke every morning thinking about his own salvation, and he would often say, I just want to get to heaven, and I've got to do a lot of good deeds to get there. And I think Muhammad's hope is that his life provides some guidance on how we might achieve for all people what we aspire for ourselves and our families. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maryum Ali.
Peace be with you, everyone here. And on behalf of the Ali family, I just want to say thank you to Louisville, Kentucky. All the love you've shown us in our lives has been unbelievable. Also, I want to thank the entire globe. My father was loved all over. The processional today was overwhelming, but it was so beautiful. I just want to say we love you just like you love us. Thank you very much. As you know, my father loved poetry. He was always rhyming and promoting his fights, and he had poems of the heart, spiritual poems, and poems to promote. And I just wrote a piece for him in honor of him on behalf of my sisters and brothers and everyone who loves my father. It's called "Thank You, Our Dear Father." My heart was sore when your spirit soared. Your physical body is no more. But my mind tells different tales of all that you taught me, your family, and the masses. Most importantly, the belief in God who created humanity to thrive in equality. You fought for a purpose to uphold the principle that we as a people have divine human rights. Staring right into the eyes of oppression, you proclaim your beautiful complexion, your God-given skills, your independent will, and the freedom of your faith. As your daughter, I am grateful for all of our conversations about men, women, and relationships, guiding me to first have a loving relationship with self, refusing anyone to chip away at my esteem, and expect the respect of a queen. Thank you, our dear Father, for asking us to think about our purpose and showing us the beauty of service to others. We marveled at your sincere love for people as you treated all who approached you with dignity. Whether they were rich or poor, your kindness was unconditional, never perceiving anyone as beneath you. So many have shared personal stories about what you have meant to them, as you have exemplified values and qualities that have enhanced their lives. If I had every dollar for every story, I could paper the sky. Your family is so proud of the legacy you left behind, but I hope that the history of you can help turn the tide of self-hate and violence, because we are overwhelmed with moments of silence for tragic deaths. Here on this soil, American soil, in the Middle East or anywhere else in this world, we crave for peace. The peace that you rest in now. We will forever cherish the 74 years you graced this earth. You will be greatly missed. But now, we send you off in celebration, a blown kiss and prayers as you enter your final round. God's last boxing bell will sound in heaven. I love you. We all love you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rasheda Ali-Walsh.
We are so honored that you have packed this room with your love. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here today to celebrate our father. You are the greatest father to us, and it was God's will to take you home. Your family will try our best to make you proud and carry on your legacy of giving and love. You have inspired us and the world to be the best version of ourselves. May you live in paradise, free from suffering. You shook up the world in life. Now you're shaking up the world in death. Daddy's looking at us now, right, and saying, I told you I was the greatest. No one compares to you, Daddy. You once said, I know where I'm going, and I know the truth, and I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm free to be who I am. Now you are free to be with your Creator. We love you so much, Daddy. Until we meet again, fly, butterfly, fly.
Hello, my name is Ali DiNicola. I was born on Muhammad Ali's birthday. It was named after him. He used to call me the little greatest. We can all learn from Muhammad's example of kindness and understanding. When Muhammad was asked how he would like to be remembered, he said, I like for them to say, he took a few cups of love, he took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness, he took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every deserving person he met. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Natasha Mundkur.
Before I begin, I would just like to say that I am truly humbled and honored to be here. And I would like to thank the Muhammad Ali Center and the Ali family for giving me the opportunity to speak and to echo the voice that Muhammad has given me. So let me tell you a story about a man who refused to believe that reality was a limitation to achieve the impossible. A man who once reached up through the pages of a textbook and touched the heart of an 8-year-old girl whose reflection of herself mirrored those who could not see past the color of her skin. But instead of drawing on that pain from the distorted reality, she found strength, just as this man did when he stood tall in the face of pelting rain and shouted, I am the disturbance in the sea of your complacency, and I will never stop shaking your waves. And his voice echoed through hers, through mine. And she picked up the rocks that were thrown at her, and she threw them back with a voice so powerful that it turned all the pain that she had faced in her life into strength and tenacity. And now, that 8-year-old girl stands before you to tell you that Ali's cry still shakes these waves today. That we are to find strength in our identities, whether we are black or white or Asian or Hispanic, LGBT, disabled or able-bodied, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, or Christian. His cry represents those who have not been heard and invalidates the idea that we are to be conformed to one normative standard. That is what it means to defeat the impossible. Because impossible is not a fact. Impossible is an opinion. Impossible is nothing. When I look into this crowd, I smile. I smile to recognize that he's not really gone. He lives in you, and he lives in me, and he lives in every person that he has touched in every corner of this world. Reality was never a limitation for Ali. For us, just as every punch his opponents threw, impossible is never enough to knock us down, because we are Ali. We are greater than the rocks or the punches that we throw at each other. We have the ability to empower and inspire and to connect and to unify, and that will live on forever. So let me tell you a story about a man. His name is Muhammad Ali. He is the greatest of all time. He is from Louisville, Kentucky, and he lives in each and every one of us. And his story is far from over. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Ramsey.
First of all, on behalf of my fellow Louisvillians, to the Ali family, we offer our condolences, our heartfelt prayers, and for Lonnie Ali, a very special prayer. We know that Muhammad was blessed with many gifts, but none more precious than Lonnie Ali, and we thank you so much. You know, I've got to tell you, Louisville, when I was in the procession today, and I saw the tens of thousands of people and all the warmth and the love and the respect that was shown for Muhammad, I got to tell you, my heart swelled with pride. I know he was watching from above, and I know he absolutely loved it. But I don't think he'd be surprised. I think Muhammad would say, Louisville, Kentucky, the greatest city of all times. I'm feeling good. Man, I'll tell you what, how can we lose with the stuff we use? I'm feeling so good, I think I'm gonna make a comeback and change my name back to Walnut Street. That's how good I feel. You know, for me, I always felt connected to Muhammad even before I'd met him. You know, maybe it was the fact that I was a Louisville boy. Maybe it's the fact that I love the Louisville Cardinals, like Muhammad. You know, but as our relationship evolved, I found that a lot of people felt this personal connection with Muhammad. And that's part of the Ali magic. You know, initially, for a lot of men my age, and certainly myself, it was the athlete that I was attracted to. I mean, that kind of size, that kind of speed, that agility, that grace, not only made him the heavyweight champion of the world 3 times, but it made him Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Century, the AP Athlete of the Century. Certainly it made him the athlete, a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. But I would argue the combination of compassion, kindness, love, and the ability to lift us up made him a once-in-a-lifetime person. You know, Muhammad was blessed with many gifts, as I said, and he was a wise and faithful steward of those gifts. There's many stories about Muhammad, but there's a couple that really, to me, encapsulate what he was all about. I remember back in 2000, I made a trip to the Summer Olympics with Muhammad, and one day he decided we were going to go see a boxing match. And I remember we're ringside, the American wins, 15,000 people are chanting, USA, USA. And I thought, this is my Olympic moment. You know, I was filled with patriotic pride. The boxer came down from the ring. He took the obligatory picture with Muhammad, the fist-to-chin shot. Hundreds of photographers from around the world were taking pictures. You know, thousands of people cheering for Muhammad and this victorious fighter. And then Muhammad leaned down to me, whispered in my ear. He said, I want to see the loser. I said, excuse me? I want to see the loser. So I motioned over to an Olympic official and I said, you know, Muhammad wants to see the loser. Can we go to the losing locker room? And we get to the losing locker room and there's not tens of thousands of people. There's not any photographers. There's just a kid in the corner on a stool. He's got a towel around his neck. He's got a bloody mouse under his eye. This has got to be the lowest point of his athletic career at the very least. Felt like he let down his country. He's defeated. And the vibe in that room was literally the lowest of low. But then when Muhammad walks in, this kid recognizes him instantly. And in broken English, he says, Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad started dancing. He said, show me what you got, man. Show me what. And Muhammad starts throwing out jabs, and this kid starts ducking and smiling. Muhammad grabs him in a bear hug. And he said, I saw what you did out there, man. You look good, man. You're moving good. You can be a champion, man. You don't give up. And I remember it warmed my heart how he took this kid from here to here in an instant. And I remember I got in the car and I said to Muhammad, Muhammad, I try to be a nice guy, but I've got to tell you, I was caught up in the moment. I didn't give that losing fighter a second thought. I said, Muhammad, you're the greatest. Muhammad said, tell me something I don't already know. But what I don't want people to forget, no doubt, to me, he is the finest example of a human that I've ever seen. The finest example of a great human being that I've ever seen, of the kindness that a human possesses. That was Muhammad Ali. But don't forget about this, man. Muhammad was the coolest cat in the room. I mean, he was good looking, he had charm, he had charisma, he had swagger before he knew what swagger was. I mean, I remember, when it was about 25 years ago, he came in town to visit his mother, and he wanted to go to Outback Steakhouse. I had a friend there who was a big Muhammad fan. So we come in, and at the time here in Louisville, there was a fireman's convention. And all of these guys had their engine numbers on their shirt, and sure enough, I'd seen this scene a million times, man. These guys line up for an autograph, and I say to Muhammad, I said, Muhammad, if you'd like, I'll play the bad guy. You know, I'll tell him to let you eat, and you can sign autographs later. Muhammad would have none of it. He's like, no, I'll sign between bites. So he's taking bites of his food, and he's signing. This one guy walks up, and you can tell he's a big fan. I mean, he knew Muhammad. He was scared to death. All this adrenaline flowing. He said, champ, he said, I saw the stance you made in the civil rights movement. I saw your stance against the Vietnam War. He said, I've got to tell you, champ, you're my hero. He said, I've got a picture of you at the firehouse. You're my hero. Muhammad instantly, he wanted to change the channel. So he said to the guy, he said, you know, you're the real hero, jumping in fires, saving lives, saving babies, putting your life on the line. He said, man, you're the real hero. And the fireman responds real quickly. I mean, he knew all the nicknames. He said, man, but you fought the bear, Sonny Liston. He says, you fought the rabbit, Floyd Patterson. You fought Big George Foreman. You fought Smoking Joe Frazier. Muhammad interrupted him real quick and he goes, yeah, but Joe wasn't really smoking. And, and I said, Muhammad, that's a good line. He goes, you're right, write that down. But it wasn't all about signing autographs and kissing babies. You know, if there was a village that needed food in a third world country, Muhammad was on plane, will travel with check. If there was a conflict and he could be part of a resolution, again, Muhammad will travel. As Lonnie had mentioned, if there were hostages to be released, Muhammad was a man of action. One of my favorite quotes, and I think it's right here in your program, Muhammad said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I just want to say, champ, your rent is paid in full. Your rent is paid in full. Your rent is paid in full. You know, in fact, I think he's paid it forward because he has taught us to love rather than to hate, to look for commonalities rather than differences. And so therefore, I think he's really paid it forward for all of us. So, as we all know now, you know, the fight is over, but I'm here to tell you, the decision is in, and it is unanimous. Because of Muhammad Ali, we all win. The world wins. Thank you so much, Muhammad. It is time for a man of peace to rest in peace, and thank you so very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Crystal.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're at the halfway point. I was clean shaven when this started. Dear Lonnie, family, friends, Mr. President, members of the clergy, all of these amazing people here in Louisville. Today, this outpouring of love and respect proves that 35 years after he stopped fighting, he is still the champion of the world. Last week, when we heard the news, time stopped. There was no war, there were no terrorists, no global catastrophes. The world stopped, took a deep breath, and sighed. Since then, my mind has been racing through my relationship with this amazing man, which is now 42 years that I know him. Every moment I can think of is cherished, and while others can tell you of his accomplishments, he wanted me to speak and tell you of some personal moments that we had together. I met him in 1974. I was just getting started as a stand-up comedian and struggling, but I had one good routine. It was a 3-minute conversation between Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali, where I would imitate both of them. Ali had just defeated George Foreman and regained the heavyweight title. Sport magazine made him the man of the year, and Dick Schaap, a wonderful writer and a great man, was the editor for Sport. And he was going to host this televised dinner honoring Muhammad Ali. So Dick called my agent looking for a comedian who did some sports material. As fate would have it, that comedian was not available. And she wisely said, it's destiny, man. And she wisely said, but listen, I got this young kid and he does this great imitation of Ali and Cosell. He'd be perfect for you. So I don't know why, but Dick said, okay, I'll try him. If he stinks, I can cut him out of the show. I couldn't believe it. My first time on television, and it would be with Ali. I arrived at the Plaza Hotel. The event was jammed. I met Mr. Schaap, who would later become a part of my family. And he said, well, how should I introduce you? Nobody knows who you are. And I said, just say I'm one of Ali's closest and dearest friends. And my thought was, I'll get right to the microphone, go into my Howard Cosell, and I'll be fine. And then I nervously move into the jammed ballroom, And that's when I saw him for the first time in person. It's very hard to describe how much he meant to me. You had to live in his time. It's great to look at clips, and it's amazing that we have them, but to live in his time, watching his fights, experiencing the genius of his talent was absolutely extraordinary. Every one of his fights was an aura of a Super Bowl. He did things nobody would do. He predicted the round that he would knock somebody out in, and then he would do it. He was funny. He was beautiful. He was the most perfect athlete you ever saw, and those were his own words. But he was so much more than a fighter as time went on. With Bobby Kennedy gone, Martin Luther King gone, Malcolm X gone. Who was there to relate to when Vietnam exploded in our face? There were millions of young men my age, eligible for the draft for a war that we didn't believe in, all of us huddled on the conveyor belt that was rapidly feeding the war machine. But it was Ali who stood up for us by standing up for himself. And after he was stripped of the title, and the right to fight anywhere in the world, he gave speeches at colleges and on television that totally reached me. He seemed as comfortable talking to kings and queens as the lost and unrequited. He never lost his sense of humor, even as he lost everything else. He was always himself, willing to give up everything for what he believed in. And his passionate rhetoric about the life and plight of black people in our country resonated strongly in my house. I grew up in a house that was dedicated to civil rights. My father was a producer of jazz concerts in New York City and was one of the first to integrate bands in the 40s and 50s. Jazz musicians referred to my dad as the Branch Rickey of jazz. My uncle and my family, Jewish people, produced Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday's classic song describing the lynching of African Americans in this country. And so I felt him. And now there he was, just a few feet from me. I couldn't stop looking at him, and he seemed to like glow, and he was like in slow motion, his amazing face smiling and laughing. I was seated a few seats from him on the dais, and in the room were all of these athletes in their individual sports, great ones. Gino Marchetti of the Baltimore Colts, Franco Harris of the Steelers, Archie Griffin, who had won the Heisman from Ohio State, literary legends, Neil Simon, George Plimpton, all on the dais, fawning over Ali, who then looked at me with an expression that seemed to say, "What is Joel Gray doing here?" Mr. Shapp introduced me as one of Ali's closest and dearest friends. 2 people clapped. My wife and the agent. I rose, Ali still staring at me. I passed right behind him, got to the podium, went right into the Cosell. Hello everyone, Howard Cosell coming to you live from Zaire. Some would pronounce it Zaire. They're wrong. It got big laughs. And then I went into the Ali. Everybody's talking about George Foreman. I want to talk about George Foreman. George Foreman was ugly. He's so slow. George was slow. I come out, voop, voop, voop. And then I rope-a-dope George, and I'm still fast at 33 years of age. I'm so fast I can turn up the lights, be in my bed before the room gets dark. Howard, I'm announcing tonight that I got new religious beliefs. From now on, I want to be known as Izzy Yiskowitz. I am now an Orthodox Jew. Izzy Yiskowitz, I am the greatest of all time. The audience exploded. See, no one had ever done him before. And here I was, a white kid from Long Island, imitating the greatest of all time, and he was loving it. And when I was done, he gave me this big bear hug, and he whispered in my ear, "You're my little brother." Which is what he always called me until the last time that I saw him. We were always there for each other. If he needed me for something, I was there. He came to anything I asked him to do. Most memorable, he was an honorary chairman for a dinner and a very important event where I was being honored by the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He did all of this promotion for it. He came to the dinner. He sat with my family for the entire evening. He took photographs with everybody. The most famous Muslim man in the world honoring his Jewish friend. And Because he was there, we raised a great deal of money, and I was able to use it to endow the university in Jerusalem with something that I told him about. And it was something that he loved the theory of, and it thrives to this day. It's called Peace Through the Performing Arts. It's a theater group where Israeli, Arab, and Palestinian actors, writers, and directors all work together in peace, creating original works of art. And that doesn't happen without him. I had so many funny, unusual moments with him. I sat next to him at Howard Cosell's funeral, a very somber day to be sure. Closed casket was on the stage. Muhammad and I were sitting somewhere over there next to each other. And he quietly whispered to me, "Little brother, do you think he's wearing his hairpiece?" So I said, I don't think so. Well, then how will God recognize him? So I said, champ, once he opens his mouth, God will know. So we started laughing. It was a muffled laugh at first, but then we couldn't contain ourselves. Here we were at a funeral, me with Muhammad Ali, laughing like two little kids who heard something dirty in church, you know, we're just laughing and laughing. And then he looked at me and he whispered, Howard was a good man. One time he asked me if I would like to run with him one morning, do road work with him. I said, well, that'd be amazing. Where do you run? He said, well, I run at this country club, and I run on a golf course early in the morning. It's very private. Nobody bothers me. We'll have a great time. And I said, champ, I can't run there. The club has a reputation for being restricted. Well, it's restricted me. They don't allow Jews there. They don't have any Jewish members. He was incensed. I'm a black Muslim, and they let me run there. Little brother, I'm never going to run there again. And he didn't. My favorite memory perhaps was 1979. He had just retired, and there was a retirement party at the Forum, Los Angeles, for Muhammad and 20,000 of his closest friends in Los Angeles. I performed a piece that I had created. The imitation had grown into a life story. It's called 15 Rounds. And I play him from the age of 18 until he's 36, ready for the rematch with Leon Spinks. I posted it on the internet last week, footage that nobody had ever seen before of me portraying Ali, doing his life for him all those years ago in 1979. There were 20,000 people there, but I was doing it only for him. It's one of my favorite performances that I've ever done in my life. I sort of got lost in him. I didn't even know where I was at the end of the performance. And suddenly I'm backstage with another heavyweight champion, Richard Pryor. And Pryor is holding on to me, crying. And then I see Ali coming. And he's got a full head of steam, and he's looking only at me, and he nudged Mr. Pryor aside, and he whispered in my ear with a big bear hug, little brother, you made my life better than it was. But didn't he make all of our lives a little bit better than they were? That, my friends, is my history with a man. And I've labored to come up with a way to describe the legend. He was a tremendous bolt of lightning, created by Mother Nature out of thin air, a fantastic combination of power and beauty. We've seen still photographs of lightning bolts at the moment of impact, ferocious in its strength, magnificent in its elegance. And at the moment of impact, it lights up everything around it, so you can see everything clearly. Muhammad Ali struck us in the middle of America's darkest night, in the heart of its most threatening gathering storm. His power toppled the mightiest of foes, and his intense light shined on America. And we were able to see clearly injustice, inequality, poverty, pride, self-realization, courage, laughter, love, joy, and religious freedom for all. Ali forced us to take a look at ourselves. This brash young man who thrilled us, angered us, confused, and challenged us ultimately became a silent messenger of peace, who taught us that life is best when you build bridges between people, not walls. My friends, only once in 1,000 years or so do we get to hear a Mozart or see a Picasso, read a Shakespeare. Ali was one of them, and yet, at his heart, he was still a kid from Louisville who ran with the gods and walked with the crippled and smiled at the foolishness of it all. He is gone, but he will never die. He was my big brother. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bryant Gumbel.
The great Maya Angelou, who was herself no stranger to fame, wrote that ultimately people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but that no one will ever forget how you made them feel. As applied to Muhammad Ali, the march of time may one day diminish his boasts and his poetry, maybe even his butterflies and bees. It may even one day dull the memories of the thriller in Manila and the rumble in the jungle. But I doubt any of us will ever forget how Muhammad Ali made us feel. And I'm not talking about how proud he made you feel with his exploits, or how special he made you feel when you were privileged enough to be in his company. I'm talking about how he gripped our hearts and our souls and our conscience and made our fights his fights for decades. People like me, who were once young, semi-gifted, and black, will never forget what he freed within us. Some of us, like him, took pride in being black, bold, and brash. And because we were so unapologetic, we were, in the eyes of many, way too uppity. We were way too arrogant. Yet we reveled in being like him. By stretching society's boundaries as he did, he gave us levels of strength and courage we didn't even know we had. But Ali's impact was not limited to those of a certain race or of a certain religion or of a certain mindset. The greatness of this man for the ages was that he was, in fact, a man for all ages. Has any man ever scripted a greater arc to his life? What does it say of a man, any man, that he can go from being viewed as one of his country's most polarizing figures to arguably its most beloved? And to do so without changing his nature or for a second compromising his principles. Yeah, you know, there were great causes, there were great national movements, there were huge divisions, that afforded Ali unusual opportunities to symbolize our struggles. But Harry Truman had it right when he said men make history and not the other way around. Or as Lauryn Hill so nicely put it, consequence is no coincidence. Befitting his stature as the GOAT, Muhammad Ali never shied away from a fight. He fought not just the biggest and baddest men of his day inside the ropes, but outside the ring he also went toe-to-toe with an array of critics, a seemingly endless succession of societal norms, the architects of a vile, immoral war, the US government. He even fought, ultimately to his detriment, the limitations of Father Time. Strictly speaking, fighting is what he did. But he broadened that definition by sharing his struggles with us and by viewing our struggles as his. And so it was that at various times he accepted and led battles on behalf of his race, in support of his generation, in defense of his religious beliefs, and ultimately, in spite of his disease. I happen to have been overseas working in Norway this past week. My buddy Matt called, told me the champ had been taken to the hospital. At this time, it was really serious. Right away, I called Lonnie, who was, as always, a pillar of strength. And as we discussed the medical details, the doctor's views, and the ugly realities of mortality, Lonnie said, "Bryant, the world still needs him." And indeed it does. The world needs a champion who always worked to bridge the economic and social divides that threaten a nation that he dearly loved. The world needs a champion that always symbolized the best of Islam to offset the hatred born of fear. And the world needs a champion who believed in fairness and inclusion for all. Hating people because of their color is wrong, Ali said. And it doesn't matter which color does the hating. It's just plain wrong. Yeah, we do need Muhammad Ali now. We need the strength and the hope, the compassion and the conviction that he always demonstrated. But this time, our beloved champion is down. And for once, he'll not get up. Not this time. Not ever again. Let me close with a quick personal story. 50 years ago, Muhammad Ali defeated George Chuvalo in Toronto, Canada. The very next day, he showed up in my Hyde Park neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. As Ali got out of a car in the driveway at the home of Elijah Muhammad, I happened to be next door, shooting hoops in a friend's backyard. I, of course, quickly ran to the fence, and for the first time in my life, I shook the champ's hand. I was 17, I was awestruck, and man, I thought he was the greatest. Now, half a century and a lifetime of experiences later, I am still awestruck. And I'm convinced more than ever that Muhammad Ali is the greatest. To be standing here by virtue of his and Lonnie's request, it's mind-numbing. The honor that Ali has done me today as he goes to his grave is one that I will take to mine. God bless you, Jam.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you. I can just hear Muhammad saying now, well, I thought I should be eulogized by at least one president. And by making you last in a long, 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 long line, I guaranteed you a standing ovation. I'm trying to think of what has been left unsaid. First, Lonnie, I thank you and the members of the family for telling me that he actually, as Bryant said, picked us all to speak and given me a chance to come here. I thank you for what you did to make the second half of his life greater than the first. I thank you for the Muhammad Ali Center and what it has come to represent to so many people. Here's what I'd like to say. I spend a lot of time now, as I get older and older and older, trying to figure out what makes people tick, how do they turn out the way they are, how do some people refuse to become victims and rise from every defeat. We've all seen the beautiful pictures of the home Muhammad Ali was a boy in, and people visiting and driving by. I think he decided something I hope every young person here will decide. I think he decided very young to write his own life story. I think he decided before he could possibly have worked it all out, and before fate and time could work their will on him, he decided that he would not be ever disempowered. He decided that not his race, nor his place, nor the expectations of others, positive, negative, or otherwise, would strip from him the power to write his own story. He decided first to use these stunning gifts: his strength and speed in the ring, his wit and way with words in managing the public, and his mind and heart to figure out at a fairly young age who he was, what he believed, and how to live with the consequences of acting on what he believed. A lot of people make it to steps 1 and 2 and still just can't quite manage living with the consequences of what he believed. For the longest time, in spite of all the wonderful things that have been said here, I remember thinking when I was a kid, this guy is so smart. And he never got credit for being as smart as he was. And then I don't think he ever got the credit for being, until later, as wise as he was. In the end, besides being a lot of fun to be around and basically a universal soldier for our common humanity, I will always think of Muhammad as a truly free man of faith. And being a man of faith, he realized he would never be in full control of his life. Something like Parkinson's could come along. But being free, he realized that life still was open to choices. It is the choices that Muhammad Ali made that have brought us all here today in honor and love. And the only other thing I'd like to say, I think we all need to really, really think about, is that the first part of his life was dominated by the triumph of his truly unique gifts. We should never forget them. We should never stop looking at the movies. We should thank Will Smith for making his movie. We should all be thrilled. It was a thing of beauty. But the second part of his life was more important because he refused to be imprisoned by a disease that kept him hamstrung longer than Nelson Mandela was kept in prison in South Africa. That is, in the second half of his life, he perfected gifts that we all have. Every single solitary one of us have gifts of mind and heart. It's just that he found a way to release them in ways large and small. I'll never forget, I asked Lonnie if she remembered the time when they were still living in Michigan, and I gave a speech in Southwest Michigan. There's an economic club there, and it's sort of a ritual when a president leaves office. And you know, you had to get reacclimated. Nobody plays a song when you walk in a room anymore. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. And this club here, there, it's called the Economic Club, I think. They're used to acting like you still deserve to be listened to, and you got to get reacclimated. So they came to dinner, and they sat with me at this dinner. And he knew, somehow he knew, that I was a little off my feed that night. I was trying to imagine how to make this new life. And so he told me a really bad joke. And he told it so well, and he laughed so hard that I totally got over it and had a great time. He had that feel about, you know, there's no textbook for that, knowing where somebody else is in their head. Picking up the body language. Then Lonnie and Muhammad got me to come here when we had the dedication to the Muhammad Ali Center, and I was trying to be incredibly old, gray-haired, elder statesman, dignified. I got to elevate this guy. So I'm saying all this stuff in very high-tone language, and Muhammad sneaks up behind me and puts his fingers up. Finally, after all the years that we had been friends, my enduring image of him is like a little reel in 3 shots. The boxer I thrilled to as a boy, the man I watched take the last steps to light the Olympic flame when I was president. I'll never forget it. I was sitting there in Atlanta. By then we knew each other. By then I felt I had some sense of what he was living with, and I was still weeping like a baby, seeing his hand shake and his leg shake, and knowing, by God, he was going to make those last few steps. No matter what it took, the flame would be lit, the fight would be won, the spirit would be affirmed. I knew it would happen. And then this, the children whose lives he touched, the young people he inspired. It's the most important thing of all. So I ask you to remember that. We all have an Ali story. It's the gifts we all have that should be most honored today, because he released them to the world, never wasting a day that the rest of us could see anyway, feeling sorry for himself that he had Parkinson's, knowing that more than 3 decades of his life would be circumscribed in ways that would be chilling to the naked eye. But with the free spirit, it made his life bigger, not smaller, because other people, all of us, unlettered, unschooled, in the unleashing said, well, would you look at that? Look at that. May not be able to run across a ring anymore, may not be able to dodge everybody and exhaust everybody anymore, and he's bigger than ever, because he is a free man of faith, sharing the gifts we all have. We should honor him by letting our gifts go among the world as he did. God bless you, my friend. Go in peace.
There will be time for that. But right now is the time for silence. So will everyone rise and observe a period of silence, reflect on what the champ meant to you as the Ali family exits.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
All right, be seated. Be seated, be seated. The program is not over. We're trying to create space for the family to be able to exit in peace. Please be seated. We want to make prayer. We want to share something before we close the program, so please be seated. As we move towards the end of the program, which will occur in a couple of minutes, I will be remiss if I didn't say the following. Indeed, as we all know, and anyone who lives within a ghetto or barrio here in the United States, that indeed there are violent, racist, reckless policemen. That's a fact. But there also are policemen and women who are dedicated professionals, who are compassionate, who have great concern for their communities. And I can say with all honesty and openness, during my past week here in Louisville, Kentucky, or past 5 days, myself, my wife, Dr. Giannotti, everyone that I've spoken to has commented on the professionalism, the dignity of the policemen here and women in Louisville, Kentucky that we've interacted with. And I'm sure there are bad apples here too, but as they say, one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch. Now, they asked me to make a prayer to close this service, but Reverend Cosby threw down the gauntlet with that West End poem. So I'm going to have to respond. This poem was written in Muhammad Ali's house. And Muhammad Ali was the first one to hear this poem. And I'm glad Mike Tyson left. It's two parts. Part one is Ali the fighter. He floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee. The greatest fighter this world has yet to see. His opponents agree on one thing, they all got it right. In the ring with Ali, your life was in danger that night. Had he lived during the time of Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, Marciano, or Max Smelling, his superiority over all of the former would be telling. Had he fought Tyson or Holyfield at the height of his career, on the list of heavyweight champions, their names would not appear. If reindeer could box, he would have fought Donner and Blitzen. If presidents could fight, he would have fought Richard Nixon. For his right was filled with power, and his left was relentless. He beat people so bad, he'd have to engage in acts of repentance. So when you discuss who was the greatest heavyweight of all time, to mention any name other than Ali's is a crime. Now, then part two is Ali the man. With the grace of a butterfly and the tenacity of a bee, he struck many a blow against injustice and indignity and inequality. Coming of age during a time of legal segregation, he came to embody the highest values of the nation. Standing up for the truth, defying the warmongering throng, he declared, I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. He would not take up the gun. He refused to pull the trigger. He quipped, ain't no Viet Cong ever called me nigger. Knowing when to attack and when to retreat, he brought an entire nation to his feet, not to cheer for his exploits going down in the ring, but to fall right in line with Malcolm and King. Willing to give up his title, the money, the lights, he dedicated himself to a higher fight. The fight for truth and justice to liberate lands occupied by the highest court in the land, his case would not be denied. With a heart made of gold and a spirit to match, he was able to rebuild his life almost starting from scratch. With the torch of love and the flame of good, he lit the fire of hope in the hearts of many boys and girls in the hood. Not knowing the word I can't, he was never deterred. And because of his example, many a dream was not deferred. On the heart of every life he touched, he left an indelible stamp, and he will always be known as the people's champ. Now, we have to make the prayer. Muhammad Ali's spirit, his body is down, but his spirit is up. And it will stay up as long as we keep it up. And we keep it up as long as we live with the grace and dignity he lived with. As long as we love with the passion he loved with. As long as we share and care and give with the boundless generosity he exemplified. So God, as we leave this hall, as we depart from this August gathering, may we be blessed to love as he loved, to live as he lived, to share as he shared, to care as he cared, to the extent of our various capacities, and to float as freely as he floated. God bless, and blessings and peace upon Muhammad. Good evening.